Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And this is another episode where we are burning the midnight oil, aren't we, Landon?
We are. It seems like this is every week.
No, and in this one, I mean, some of the other episodes were like, okay, we'll probably have to get to this tonight. This one, we had no idea. We were actually at the Pride Parade today. Maybe some of you guys saw our pictures that we posted. We had a wonderful time. We hung out with friends. It was so fun. And then we came home and it's like, oh, relaxing evening. No, we opened up Mormonish email and all hell broke loose.
Yes, it did. We were getting contacted from all over the place
Yep.
with people saying, you've got to hit this, you've got to cover this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because basically, Fairview has started to mobilize as far as the LDS in anticipation of the upcoming town council meeting on June 4th, just a few days from now in the evening. And so I'm calling this episode White Shirts this time, and you'll see why. This, of course, is a shout out to Lone Mountain. At their town council meeting, the LDS population were told to all wear blue shirts to attend the meeting so that they could make a very strong visual effect of support for the temple. And this time, white shirts are coming, right?
how come they always use BYU colors? Why don't they do like red and black and do Utah colors or some?
I feel like they're picking colors that the LDS people might already just happen to have. Like if you
have in their
said wear
closet.
your fuchsia shirt, the guys may not have that. That's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, I
Although,
don't
do you
think
have a
any
fuchsia
LDS
shirt,
guy
Landon?
owns a shirt that's not white. Yeah.
I bet you have a fuchsia shirt somewhere. I'm just guessing you might.
I don't think I have a fuchsia shirt. That's
We need to fix
I'll
that.
have to
We need to
look.
fix that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go through this and we'll explain to you all what we mean. So we are going to be talking about the McKinney, Texas Temple. This is going to be built in Fairview, Texas, but called the McKinney, Texas Temple. These are neighboring towns. So all the action at the town council is happening in Fairview because that's where it's going to be built. It's going to be 43,000 square feet, 173-foot tall spire. And I know nobody can comprehend what that is, but here is a rendering, and you can see on the right-hand side of this slide what it's going to look. This is to scale. This was created by someone who does this for a living. I think I see the stake center a little to the left. Do you see that, Landon, that little spire over there?
Yeah, that's the stake center. In fact, we had somebody comment about the water tower. You can see it out there in the distance, and they said, "Well, that's not a fair comparison because they're not the ones further in the distance." Well, of course, it's further in the distance. It's taken from a certain perspective,
Right.
but the stake center is right next door to the temple, so
Yep.
those perspectives are pretty close to look at the
Yep.
stake center compared to the temple.
I know it's hard to get it right. And we've run into that before when we ourselves have tried to, put a temple to size. We don't do that anymore. We leave that to the professionals. And again, this is a professional to scale rendering from someone who does this for a living. And we all know when we see a stake center, you can look up at it, right? The steeple is pretty high. You can look up. So can you even imagine if that little building on the left is the stake center that you already look up to, what that temple will be like?
Yeah, the stake center is to project our eyes towards heaven.
Yeah. You are getting the message, Landon.
The
You are
temple
getting
has to be higher, so we have to like bend our neck even further to look up.
That's an interesting story. I heard a story about the Vernal Temple, which was a tabernacle converted to a temple. And this was years ago when President Hinckley saw the plans or went there to the site and saw that there was a stake center near it that had a spire that was taller than the temple. They put that second spire on to make sure that the temple, which is a holier building because hardly anyone can go in, that it was going to be taller.
Evidently, God's more straight up than angled when we look up.
Straight up than angle,
Yep.
that could go all kinds of directions. I don't even want to go. So anyway, as Landon alluded to, we opened our Mormonish email, and I think there were about 8 emails all of a sudden, and everybody's like, attention, or this is happening, or are you aware of this? And I was like, what is going on? Boy, you go to a parade for a couple hours and all hell breaks loose. I don't know. So to kind of paraphrase, here's one of the emails that we got. This person said, I just got an email regarding the Fairview Temple. So these are popping into faithful LDS inboxes all over this afternoon. We live about an hour away from Fairview. this person lives an hour away from where the temple is going to be built. And we are on the southeast part of the state. I believe we will be eventually in the Fort Worth Temple District where it's going to be built. And then some other stuff about the Dallas Temple. So they're not near Fairview, and their temple that they will be assigned to attend won't even be Fairview, yet they received this email about Fairview. They are inviting members of our stake to email in support of the temple and to attend a meeting on Tuesday. Now, we'll see later that the meeting had been planned for, the meeting is Tuesday night at 7:30. That's right. I saw someone else post on a local post-Mormon group post that they received a similar email, and with how far away our stake is, I believe they must have sent this out to a ton of stakes. So this person is saying, I got this. I can't even imagine who else got that. And that's backed up by the other emails that we started receiving.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. We started getting them from all over the place.
Yeah, we did. So here is the email that this person received. And again, we always try to redact on Mormonish because I don't want people emailing people, either faithful or anybody. I just, we don't want that. So we try to do it. If we miss it, we're sorry, but we try. So I'm going to have you read this, Landon. Again, this was showing up in emails all over the place because we were being notified.
Yeah, this is the Alliance Texas Stake. Good afternoon, Alliance Stake members. Our stake president has asked me to send out an email to ask for your help in the local approval of the building of the McKinney Temple. Many of you may have already received a similar email from your bishop or heard this during sacrament meeting today. So we apologize for duplication, but wanted to make sure everyone saw this.
Yeah, and let me say right there, we were also notified that this was mentioned in several different words of people that told us, hey, there was something over the pulpit, something was read, something was said.
Yeah, the opposition to the building of the temple continues to grow. The letter writing campaign in opposition to the temple has surpassed the members of the church whom have shown support. Elder Cannon, our Area 70, is calling us to action. There are two things that we are being asked to consider. First, they are requesting that we write a simple email stating our support for the construction of the temple and why it's important to you. This doesn't have to be long, could only be a few sentences, but please be sincere and kind in your words. This email should be sent to Israel Roberts, Fairview Town Planning Manager.
Yeah, exactly. The planning manager.
Subject should read in support of temple. Please also copy this email to someone else. In the end, the hope and need is for 15,000 emails to be sent to the town manager by Monday.
Wait, 15,000 emails to the town manager. And this is Sunday evening that we're podcasting about this. We'll release it a few hours from now. And this was in the afternoon. So within 24 hours, they'd like to generate 15,000 emails.
I don't want to be the city manager when he shows up to work on Monday.
I get stressed out when I have like 10 emails. I'm like, what is happening? Oh my goodness, 15,000. And again, this is an hour away. Okay. So I can see the net is wide as they are trying to gather these support and these 15,000 emails.
And it's interesting. They say the opposition to the building of the temple continues to grow. That's not true. The opposition is not to the building of the temple. The opposition is to giving variances to the temple to allow it to be built higher than the codes allow. That no one is opposing the temple being built. They're opposing it not meeting the codes in the area that it's being built in.
Correct. And thank you for, again, stressing that, Landon, because all of these letters have that rhetoric about the opposition or the opponents to it. And that is not the case at all. And I believe even faithful members are starting to recognize that and question, how do I explain this to my neighbors? That they have some very valid points about changing codes and variances and regulations. So yeah, to continue to characterize it as opponents or the adversary, I've heard it, that is not true whatsoever.
Yep. Second, they are also inviting members to attend the Fairview Town Council Meeting on Tuesday, June 4th at 7:30 p.m. Arrive early. Most of us will be standing outside, but we need the image and the visual of thousands of people in support. The council will be voting on the application for the temple. If you attend, please wear a white shirt to create a unified and visually cohesive show of support. There will be a large number of people attending. For your comfort, you may want to bring items such as an umbrella, water, camping chairs, fans, and any other necessities. Now, this is interesting because at Las Vegas, they made a very big deal that only Las Vegas residents were there at the city council. But here they're bringing people from towns that aren't even part of Fairview to come and overwhelm the Fairview local residents in their attempt to have their voices heard. They're going to completely surround the building. The town of Fairview, one of the great blessings that they're promised is that they'll be blessed for having a temple. And one of those is they get to rent a much larger facility at the taxpayers' expense. So all these people, all these LDS people can come into town and picket for their temple when it's not even their town.
Yeah. And they have rented a larger facility. That's exactly what's happened because of what they're anticipating here. And yeah, I feel like I'm having deja vu all over again. We were just barely podcasting about the blue shirts coming to the Lone Mountain meeting. And then our last podcast, the love letter to the temple, we talked about the list of sort of infractions that the residents there had kind of submitted, saying that the Lone Mountain residents, when they were there, had sort of blocked them from being able to speak, had not obeyed the marshals that were there. There were some problems sort of with the rule of order in the meeting. There were many children under 18 that were there who weren't even legally allowed to speak, yet they were there in a blue shirt. They were caught on film to give that visual presence. And it just sort of, as you said, stopped residents from being able to get up and speak, or at least caused a chaotic environment.
These people are being bussed in, so it looks like there's thousands of people in Fairview that support this temple, when that is not in fact the case. It is an attempt to make it's deceitful. They're trying to make it look like there's a lot of people in Fairview who want this, and these people aren't from Fairview. So
exactly. And we don't know, we made that not a joke, but we'd heard there were buses because in Lone Mountain there was a events permit that was pulled. I haven't heard anything about that here. So I think we're using bussed in a way that we just mean sent in, told to come in from other places. And what's the line again? I can't read it, where they said we want to have a visual. They wanted
to have
thousands of people in support.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a photo op. It's a photo op in white shirts.
Yeah, they're trying to manipulate the media to make it look like there's thousands of people in Fairview who support this when that's not the case. And we'll show.
All right. So that's the first thing they're asking. First, they're saying 15,000 emails by Monday, and please come out personally, physically be there and wear a white shirt.
Then they go on, say, please sincerely and prayerfully consider attending and making arrangements to be there on time. Please remain non-defensive and kind, regardless of others' comments. As neighbors, we can hold differing views without being disagreeable. We need peaceful participation. Please sincerely, consider attending and making arrangements to be there on time. Oh, okay. This is not the first time that there has been local opposition to the church or to the building of a temple of the Lord in Dallas-Fort Worth. This happened 40 years ago. And when the Dallas temple was constructed, dedicated. This is our turn to help in the gathering of Israel by constructing another house of the Lord. Okay, I'm going to raise my hand. I have 2 comments. Here, call on me, Landon. Otherwise, we're going to overtime. Go. Yes, Rebecca. No. So my first comment is this thread through all these letters in all the towns that we cover where they're building a temple and the residents are saying, please build it somewhere where it's zoned for. There's this sense that, please be peaceful. We want to be peacemakers, making it sound like the residents are going to cause a huge problem, right? They're the ones that are in opposition. They're not going to be civil. They're not going to be respectful. That does not happen. But it's such a backhanded, I don't know what you would even call that tactic, where you say you need to be a peacemaker, implying that the other people will not be. And that's simply not the case. Yes, and during the meeting that was held, we got some reports from that, and the PR person who's responsible for this meeting told them, when we go on, if they spit on us, we're not going to retaliate. So she's putting up the story that they're probably going to be spit on and persecuted for. Well, and that leads me to my second comment on the last paragraph there. The persecution complex. This has happened 40 years ago. It's almost like some of the organizational side of the church is whipping these faithful members up into a frenzy of, we're being persecuted, we must defend, And again, I do feel like it's just not the common resident. I feel like there's some kind of institutional side that's sending these emails, inciting them. I mean, literally, it's true. We did hear that from somebody at the meeting that we're going to talk about, that they're saying they might be really aggressive, or they might, do something that's
not appropriate. So of course that's scary to people. And of course they double down. I almost feel like some of the faithful members are being used in a way. Do you feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. And some of the faithful members feel that way. That's why
Yeah,
they're sharing this information with us, because they are not comfortable with the way the church is
right,
handling this.
right. Yep. I mean, if I had a family member that got an email like this telling that, and they were all upset, I would be upset. I would say, we got to figure out what this is. I don't think I don't think this is a correct portrayal of exactly what's happening, and you might be being used. So, and that's one of our motivations, I think, for podcasting. So, all right. So this email went out to many, many people, and then emails and posts go far and wide. And this is what inundated our email tonight. People just letting us know. Somebody said, here's on a missionary mama's site, somebody on a mission. I've redacted everything. This person is in Idaho who sent this to me. They're being asked in Idaho. It's being circulated around to please support the McKinney Temple. There's another one. I think this is a women's group again, and the emails are the same, or they're kind of cut and paste. They all say we need the 15,000 emails. It reminds me kind of in the Christian community. There's such a thing called a prayer warrior. Prayer warriors, we need you. They want everybody to do this mass prayer, this good energy. This kind of reminds me of that, but it's circulating everywhere. Somebody in Idaho who said they were technically, I think, in a Spokane state. So, but they're definitely not anywhere near Texas, although I think they had some connection possibly in some way to the missionary that was sending it out. But I think, if I remember, it said something like the mission president said it was okay to send it out. So definitely everybody's doubling down and trying to support this campaign to get 15,000 emails by tomorrow.
Oh, overnight. Yep.
Overnight. Yeah, which will be today when this airs. So, we don't need to read through all of these, but just different stakes, similar versions of this. And we were told also that this was read from the pulpit in a lot of places, or mentioned in the pulpit a lot of places. And again, here we go, another area. These are all different areas. None of them Fairview. None of them even, some of them not even close to Fairview. I think this is the McKinney ward.
This is McKinney State.
So,
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, everything blew up this afternoon as they tried to mobilize and get everybody to make this 15,000 email quota to this one individual, right, on the town council, and to let them know that they fully support the temple, and all in preparation for the meeting that's happening Tuesday night.
Of course, how many of these 15,000 people have any idea even what the issue is?
They don't.
They're just going to share their testimony, how important a temple is to them, and overwhelm the town manager and cause them to have to sort through all of this before the meeting.
Right. And again, if they just simply read the email or the post on social media, it talks about opposition and opponents and adversary, things like that. So they're not going to understand the issue. They're just going to say, we're being attacked. I need to write an email. That's all they're going to know. And I understand that. I understand, that idea that something you care about needs help and is being attacked. But there's so much more to this issue that they're not being clear on. So then what we found out, and this all happened in real time for us tonight. That rarely happens, but it did. And so we were made aware of a letter that went out to leadership in the Fairview area. And the meeting that this letter we're going to read invited people to was supposed to happen on Tuesday night, but because the town council meeting was moved to Tuesday night, this meeting was quickly moved to Sunday night, which is right now when we're podcasting. So do you want to go ahead and read that letter that the upper leadership in the Fairview area received?
Yeah. Dear brothers and sisters, in our ongoing efforts to prepare for the McKinney, Texas Temple, and under the direction of Elder Arthur Rascon, our Area 70, we would like to have a gathering of leadership from throughout the Temple District on the evening of June 4th at 7 p.m. at the McKinney Stake Center. At this meeting, we will share a more clear course of what each of us can do to move this effort forward. All your questions will also be answered, as we will leave plenty of time to allow this to happen. Joining us at this meeting will be a variety of individuals from church headquarters who are directly involved in this project. The following are invited to this meeting. If you are unable to attend, please send a substitute. Stake presidency, stake council, all bishops, all relief society, and elders quorum presidents in the stake. Please plan to be present and united in our thoughts and prayers regarding further opportunities we have to dialogue and to help bring this temple to our areas. Sincerely, I'm assuming that's stake president.
Yeah. So it's a prep meeting basically for leadership that's going to be attending the town council meeting. And again, several people that were at this meeting kind of told us about the meeting, told us what was being said, kind of paraphrased from some things. So that tells me, like what you said, Landon, that faithful members in leadership are not necessarily understanding or on board with what's happening there. Is that how you kind of see it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're not comfortable with what's going on and how this is being handled
Right.
with their neighbors. And during the Q&A, that was actually one of
Mhm.
the things that I thought from the notes that we got that the
Mhm.
people were concerned about.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think we're just going to go through some notes on this meeting that happened Sunday, what's today? The 2nd at 7, would have been just in the evening is when we started getting reports. So, and again, we're not going to try to name names or show anybody. We're just going to try to give a general overview of some notes and concepts that we were given from some people that were attending this meeting. So we have the Area 70, he's in attendance and he's speaking about the temple. And he said something like, only the Church of Jesus Christ has the answers to all of the world's problems, and those answers are found in the temple. And I've heard that before too, that the temple is so important to have in a town because it really brings peace and it is a blessing to everyone. So that's not surprising that we would hear that at that meeting.
Well, that's surprising to me because only the Church of Jesus Christ, which
Wow.
notice he didn't say of Latter-day Saints, he would have
Well,
been
he might have.
corrected.
Again, we're paraphrasing
Okay.
from what some people are telling us. So,
But to say that only the church has all the world's answer to all the world's problems and those answers are found in the temple, anyone who's been to the temple, they don't even mention the world's problems. What you do is you commit that you will follow them and do whatever they say. There's no,
well,
there's nothing where they discuss world hunger, world peace, any of those things. You make covenants to serve the church.
have
That's
you
what
ever
happens.
thought that serving the church may solve all the world's problems? Maybe that's what they mean by that. I don't know.
Well,
All right.
evidently they should be able to figure out how to solve this problem, and I think they will. And evidently the way you do that is through your lawyers.
Well, and we're going to talk about that too. All right, let's go to our next slide. So again, and interestingly, Curtin McConkie is the church's law firm. There's a giant building downtown Salt Lake. We've taken pictures in front of it, haven't we? So we even have some friends. I have some friends that actually work there. So, but these lawyers are sent in. They've been sent into other cities to make sure people understand legally what's going on. So an attorney who was there present at this meeting said, nothing will bless the saints more than a temple here. And there's a slide up there where they are showing, they're giving an audio visual presentation about the temple. And the lawyer goes on to say, lots of changes are going on behind the scenes, even in the last few weeks. And that was kind of nebulous. The people that contacted us didn't know what that meant. The church is starting to pivot. Okay, that nobody really knew what that meant either, and there wasn't clarification. We'll turn up the heat if we need to, but we don't want to do it more than we need to. So that's a little ominous. We will turn up the heat, but we're going to try not to.
Well, we know they've already are turning up the heat because they're going to have a meeting on Tuesday with the city council and the
That's
mayor
right.
and all of their attorneys before the
Before
meeting.
before the town council meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't think it takes a lot of creative thinking to know what's going to be said in that
Right.
in that
Behind
meeting.
closed doors. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, that happens during the day, as I understand it, prior to the town council meeting in the evening. So, all right, let's see what else we learned about this meeting. You want to read this one, Landon?
Yeah, this one's really concerning. This is from the Curtin McConkie attorney. He says, if the city decides to play along, this will be a short game. If not, it will be a long game. But rest assured, we will win, and there will be a wonderful temple in your midst before long.
Okay, and again, this is just paraphrased from people that gave us descriptions of, I mean, it's pretty accurately paraphrased. This is pretty much what they told us was said. So, but I just, This is what we heard. So yeah, that's pretty much par for the course. We've heard that in every city that we've covered.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they're disguising this at all. They're saying if the city council votes against us, we'll sue them. That's pretty much the way any reasonable person would interpret that coming from an attorney.
No, that's what a long game means. And
Yeah.
we've seen the long game in Cody and in Heber, right? Where it's been ongoing. Cody, it's been a year and a half, and they finally had their final hearing, and we're still waiting to get information on that, how the judge is going to rule. But yeah, they are willing to play that long game. And that takes a lot of what to play a long game, Landon?
A lot of money.
It takes a lot of money. And usually the residents groups or a city, they can't compete with that. So the long game does work.
And here's the concerning part to me. If you're a Fairview resident, that's the last thing you want to hear is that they're going to sue your city into oblivion. But they're basically saying, well, the church is more important than your city, so you're here to support the church. It doesn't matter that the church is going to bankrupt your city. We expect your support with the church.
Yeah. Well, as I keep saying over and over, the residents don't see it yet, but the temple will be a blessing. They just don't see it. We've got to sort of ramrod it in there. And once it's there, it'll be a blessing. We
have to sue you and bankrupt you, and then you'll see how special the temple really is in your community.
It's for your own good.
It's for your own good.
It would be
even though you can't go.
Even though you can't go. It would be great if the residents and the church could work together to find a place that would be great for the temple. I mean, and I think we might have mentioned this on another podcast, but back in like the Hinckley era, they used to be very proud of working with residents, fitting it in where it was a part of the community. It wasn't invasive. You know, they would mention that in church articles about how glad they were to have been able to, you know, be a part of local communities and fit in and not have this kind of stuff happen. But then something changed. I don't know. It's I mean, they're building more and more temples. They're, you know, on a really fast pace, a hamster wheel of temple building. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't think that exists anymore, that idea that you work with a community and then you're a beloved part of it through the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not a part of the community. They're above the community, and that's what they're trying to say.
Yep. Apparently, and I think there were 2 Curtin McConkie attorneys in attendance. There was that area rep, and then there was a local representative, kind of a PR representative there. So one of the attorneys said, just to paraphrase again, what we heard from some of the people in attendance at this meeting, try and take a certain piece, and he's talking to the leadership there, explaining how they can address the town council. Because now they've seen it happen, right? They've seen the planning commission, they've seen Lone Mountain meetings, and they've seen what doesn't work. And what doesn't work is what this guy in the picture is doing. That doesn't work, right? It does not work. So they're saying, try and take a certain piece of the temple structure, the spire or the height of the walls. Now, the walls is something new. We hadn't heard about the walls a month ago, but the walls have now made it into the Lone Mountain lawyer's address. And I think one other thing, the walls are important too now, the spire and the walls. Somebody made a joke, I can't remember who it was. They said, do you think the parking lot eventually will be something that's a major tenet of our faith? I don't know. It's possible. All right. So take the spire or the height of the walls and make it part of your testimony Tuesday night at the city council meeting. Don't just bear your testimony of the temple, but specifically the spire of the temple or the height of the temple. Oh, I think I repeated that twice. Or the height of the temple. Yeah, you'll talk about the height of the temple. So anyway, legal advice to the leadership there of the things that they should mention when they stand in front of the town council.
Yeah. And again, I think we saw during the planning commission that they didn't care about your testimony of the temple. What they cared about were the zoning laws, and to please it, they over and over said, please address the zoning requirements. Please do not we know how important it is. You've told us that over and over. Please limit this to the rules and how this applies to the planning board. And the same thing happens with the city council. The city council there is to decide whether to allow the zoning. People's personal testimony of their belief in their church has nothing and has no place in a in a civic meeting. It should be limited to the zoning codes and the reason. And but the reason that they keep telling them, it seems odd that they have to bring the lawyers in to tell the leadership of the church that you need to tell how important that spire is to you. Over and over and over again, tell about how important the spire is to you. This is a legal move, and they all but said that in the meeting, and we'll talk about that a little bit too.
I think they did. And in the meantime, breaking news. I just got an email. I'm telling you, these are not stopping. People are concerned about what's happening. And these emails are from faithful members of the church. These are active attending members who are just concerned about what's happening. Just very quickly. So this is to a Dallas, Texas stake, not in the area at all. I'm just going to read one line to get this point across. It's from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It says, we recognize that most of you are outside the boundaries of McKinney, Texas, Temple District, but this invitation is to everyone in the 3 coordinating councils in this region. So I'm not sure what that refers to. As you support the McKinney Temple, and then it just goes on. There are concerns about traffic and environmental impact. We need to be a united community. We need to change the narrative. Again, they know that they're contacting people outside of, where it's relevant.
Of the city, yeah.
Yeah.
We keep hearing the not in my backyard argument that people are saying, well, I don't want it in my backyard. These guys aren't even impacted at all by it.
They're in Idaho.
Yeah, but they want them to weigh in, which is exactly the opposite of what we were hearing in Las Vegas. The only Las Vegas residents should be allowed, and that they weren't bringing people in from outside of Las Vegas. They kept saying that over and over. Well, we know here they are bringing, and they are having people from outside the community come in to weigh in.
Oh, I know. Sorry, just had to break in with that because I thought it was interesting. Another conversation, a confirmation that they recognize that's what they're doing. All right, this was one of the strangest things that I heard. Do you want to read this?
Yeah, coaching will be available tonight after the meeting from Curtin and McConkie attorneys. So they are putting together a coaching after the meeting. You could come and they would tell you how to approach the city council and give your testimony so that it met all the requirements that they needed you to say.
Yeah, and they only wanted to coach Fairview residents because they only want, Fairview
They're the only
residents
ones allowed to speak,
I guess. But I just had this image of, a coach going, you got to talk about the spire, Rocky. You got to mention the walls, Rocky. I mean,
win, Rocky, win.
You got to win. You got to talk about the parking lot, Rocky. Bring it up. Your eye goes to heaven. Heaven and earth meet. Say it, Rocky. I mean, I'm sorry we're being facetious, but it seems so calculated, and I feel like it's such, again, disrespectful to this town council, right, of individuals in the community who give their time, their effort, everything to serve their city and to try to make decisions that are best for the city. And here is this group. And again, I don't think it's just the members. I feel like they're being manipulated institutionally to come in and do this. And it's very disrespectful to maneuver and to manipulate the behind the scenes with the intent to manipulate a town council that has been elected. Sorry, I sound like I'm on a soapbox, but elected to do its best for a town.
This is what is known in Mormon circles as lying for the Lord. One of the questions to get into the temple that members are asked is, are you honest in all your dealings with your fellow man? And this is why a lot of the members are saying they feel like they're stuck in this temple fight, because if they go and say what the church leaders are asking them to say, they know that they are lying. But the church has asked their members to do this forever. Joseph Smith said that there was no polygamy going on, and Brigham Young said there was no polygamy, but we all know there was polygamy going on in the early church. When they ended polygamy and the government forced them to end polygamy, Joseph F. Smith, the prophet, went to Congress, and under oath to the Congress, he lied to Congress and said, we are no longer performing plural marriages. This was in 1905. Well, guess what? They were performing plural marriages. He knew that. Members of the first presidency were getting married at this time. They were lying for the Lord. Them telling you that the temple was only 2 stories tall, while technically correct, was a lie. And they said it would meet all the codes, which it doesn't. This is called lying for the Lord. Members feel, or they're taught, that as long as you're lying for the church, it's okay because the Lord can't sin. Therefore, if you're lying on behalf of the Lord, that it's okay. And this is what they're asking them to do. They're asking them to go to the council and tell them that the walls are important, that the height of the celestial room is important, that it must be tall, that it must have a spire that points to God and is hundreds of feet tall. And this is what they're telling them that they must say. And it's a lie. It's a lie. And this is why some of their leadership is saying, I'm not comfortable with this because we know, and we'll talk about this in the question and answer period during this meeting, the residents were, the leadership was specifically asking this question to the lawyer, saying, what do we say? This isn't important to us. What are we supposed to tell them? And so we'll cover that. But this is lying for the Lord, you know, and they're being coached by attorneys how to lie to try to make this sound like it's important. It's a legal argument. It's not a religious doctrine, but they're trying to make the religious doctrine legal so that they can force this down the throat of the Fairview residents.
Yeah. And I do know what they're going to tell them. I know what the lawyers are telling the residents. They're saying, talk about the spire, Rocky.
Yeah.
I just had to say it one more time. I'm sorry. This picture made me laugh all afternoon. So, I mean, okay. All right. The local church kind of PR rep said, we've already made accommodations for the traffic and the lighting. So it sounds like maybe they've been changing things or working, and are requesting a height variance of both the structures and the steeple. So probably just trying to get the people up to speed.
Yeah. And I like how they say they've made accommodations. You don't make accommodations to the laws. You meet them. You either meet, you don't get to say, we've met 2 of the 5 requirements and therefore they should pass, they should overlook the other 3. They're asking for a variance because they're deviating from what the rules say they can have. Yeah. And so they're asking, and it's one thing to ask for a deviance of, you know, we need a couple extra feet to fit something in. When you're going 5, 6, 10 times the heights of what the code is, you're no longer asking for a variance. You're asking them to completely absolve themselves of all zoning codes for any religious facility anywhere in their city. And that's what they're asking for.
Yeah, and they also call them concessions. That just makes me laugh. We've made concessions. It's like you come into my house and you tell me, am I doing The Godfather now? I think I am. You come into my... RFM will go, you're doing it all wrong, right? He's always critiquing me on my impressions, but it is like that. You're coming into my house and you're saying you're making a concession for me. This is my house.
I make the rules. Yeah.
I make the rules. Yes. And we can work together, you know, but this is a strange way to look at it. And this is a picture, if you go back, that was a picture of the Washington, D.C. temple lit up at night. They call it the Surrender Dorothy Temple. You can probably guess why. It kind of looks like the Emerald City and some traffic there. So just so nobody was confused that that's McKinney, because we always get called on that. That's not the right temple. This is the Washington, D.C. temple. All right, go ahead. You can read that one.
Architects use height to inspire, to draw our eyes heavenward. That's why our temples must be so tall. The highest form of worship happens in the temple, so it must be done in a large building.
Right.
Again, this is a complete lie.
Yeah.
The height of the temple is not important. The size of the temple can be done in any size. And they know this. And they even said it in the meeting tonight, that was the reason, that the reason they're doing this is so that they can continue to build large temples.
Oh, yes, we're going to cover that. That's a big part of this. And that, again, that was the Curtin McConkie attorney. And again, paraphrase from what one of the people that were was reaching out to us that had actually been at the meeting.
Temples do not need to be large.
And let me ask you this, Landon. Now, when I was growing up, I heard, so of course, in Mormon doctrine, we've talked about this before, the idea of the millennium. Christ comes back. He completely scorches the earth. People like you and me will be completely burnt up. But those that are left, that are righteous, they will be doing temple work, going to the temple nonstop, 24 hours a day. And of course, the church is saying this is why we're pushing and building so many temples right now. But when I was growing up, I heard there would be a temple, a small temple on every street corner. Like even some of the existing church buildings might be used as temples in the millennium. So did you ever hear anything like that?
I did hear that. In fact, Joseph Smith's designs for independent or the Jackson County, Missouri area, he had a temple on every single corner.
Yeah, but they were like small, very utilitarian, like functional temples, because the idea was just to come in and go through the ordinances and the things that you do there and go through quickly and repeatedly. So it's interesting now that there's this focus on these massive structures when this was not a focus when Landon and I were growing up. And I now say between us, we have 12 decades in the church, right? Practically, almost, we're close, so there are things that we never heard. And that was that this massive size and the walls and the height were really connected in any way to the importance of what goes on inside. We were taught what goes on inside is the most important thing.
And one of the things they mentioned was that the temples, if you go back to the Old Testament, the temples had a pillar of fire and clouds of light to draw your attention upwards. Well, that wasn't a temple, that was a tabernacle in the wilderness. And second of all, nobody is opposed to a cloud being over the top of the temple, nor if God chooses to have a pillar of light, fire come out of the sky. I don't think Fairview residents would take exception to that.
With an act of God, literally an act of God.
It would be an act of God. Act of gods are allowed under the current zoning codes.
There you go. You made a really good point, and I can't remember, we do so many temple podcasts if we mentioned this, but we hear him say over and over, it draws your eye to God. It draws your eye to the heaven, but it doesn't. It may draw your eye upward, but look at this picture. What is it capped off at?
Yeah, that's the angel Moroni. Yeah,
the
so
angel
you stop
Moroni.
and look at the angel Moroni. What's that up there? And let's face it, the LDS Church does not believe that God lives in the sky.
No.
So why do we have to look upwards? They say God lives in your heart. Why aren't we looking downwards then?
That's right. The Spirit is everywhere. The Spirit is with us. You're absolutely right. And I should have put this slide up, but one of our Cody residents reminded me of a scripture that says God does not dwell in a house made by hands. Yep. Yeah, he does not dwell in the temples. So, and I think that's why in the Mormon church, we do talk a lot about, your spirit and your heart, and God is with you everywhere, but only recently has there been this focus on actually his house of the Lord. When we were growing up, it was always the temple. And in the last couple of years, we've seen a change where they now call it the house of the Lord. It's very interesting how things morph.
Yeah, they're clearly changing it for varying reasons. True.
So then this is another screenshot of something about the PR rep was talking about petitions and emailing and things like that. Do you want to read this, Landon?
Yeah, they've got two emails, paper and an online. They said of approximately 5,800 adults residing in the Allen, McKinney, and Plano stakes, only 2,667 have signed the paper petition. It has been signed by 71 Fairview residents. 4,000.
So 2,000. Give the number again. 2,000. I can't read it.
667
signatures, but only 71. What's the percentage on that list?
Yeah, that's very low. And here's what's got me concerned here is they're saying in the Allen, McKinney, and Plano stakes. So they're saying there's 5,800 adults in these stakes. Only 2,600 have signed, only half have signed it. And only 71 of the Fairview residents have signed it. They are keeping track of whether or not their members are signing this petition. They are calling them out and saying, hey, 71 Fair. So they know who signed it.
I did not notice that.
Track of them. And they're calling upon them and said, brethren, you haven't signed yet. When are you going to get over to the temple? And when are you coming over to sign this?
See, that's very interesting because we know as far as attendance and things like that, they keep meticulous records. They count who's in every meeting. I mean, I was called into bishops' interviews where they said, notice that you weren't at sacrament meeting the last 2 times. I mean, they know, they count. They don't release that information to anybody because then people can extrapolate certain, like trends, like maybe membership is shrinking or something. But here we go. Here they are completely tracking. They know exactly how many people have signed. They know exactly where they are because they can tell us that 71 Fairview residents haven't signed. And this is the hard copy petition. Like
which means it's open
around
for them to look. Yeah. You can see who you can see who has signed all of these. They are tracking their members and making sure, and they're calling on them and saying, brethren, we don't have enough signatures.
Right.
Get on those brethren who haven't signed it yet and make sure that they've get to where they need to be and sign this.
Is McKinney, and sometimes it runs together in my mind, the area where they actually had the tables to sign set up in the church?
I believe that was the paper petition in McKinney.
In McKinney, and that they had
actually, they may have done that in Nevada too.
Yeah, and they had actually called people in the ward, made them in charge of gathering
the signatures.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that explains.
So that puts you in a very bad spot when they're coming around saying, you haven't signed. Well, now you have to say, well, I didn't sign because I don't agree with it.
And then there's a problem.
Then there's a problem.
Yep.
And now you're looked at in your church as a problem or someone who doesn't follow the brethren.
Right.
And no one's going to do that. So they end up signing even if they don't agree with that. So these signatures are really irrelevant. And when you look at the numbers, 4,806 have signed the online petition. Of those, 31 are Fairview residents. So the Fairview residents seem to be going, I don't know that I really want to sign this thing. And yet they're keeping track of them and reporting the numbers in a meeting, in an open meeting to the leadership. They're telling them, this is how many have signed of your members.
My theory is that those that are in Fairview, they're in the community. They're with the residents. They hear the residents. They're friends with the residents. They're interacting with the residents. They're in the schools with the residents. So they have more of an understanding of what some of the concerns might be about the temple. And other people who are just signing, they live in Idaho. Sure, I'll sign that. The church is being attacked, right? The Fairview residents, they're on the ground and they see the realities of it. And they also understand the realities of living in the community before, during, and after this process.
Yeah. That's
really interesting.
This is union tactics here. Where you're forcing people to sign and whether they agree or not, they end up pretty much having to sign.
No, and we've heard this in every other town. In Heber, of course, where they're also trying to build a temple and the residents are saying, let's try to follow the laws of the land. They actually were able to try to get signatures on a petition to get something put back on the ballot instead of just a unilateral decision by a county commission. And as they went door to door, they would have people say, I'm really sorry. I wish I could, but my husband is LDS and I just can't. I can't let anybody know I feel this way. Sometimes they would set up a booth at a store that said, sure, you can sit outside. And then later the store owner would come out and say, I'm really sorry. It's been alluded that if I let you guys stay here, it's not going to be good for my business. People are afraid. There are scare tactics in this. There's just, whether it's just kind of perceived intimidation or actual intimidation, there are many reasons why people might feel one way and not be able to reflect it in an online or a written petition.
Absolutely. You want to talk about this here?
Yeah, that's just, there is a change, but another online petition they're trying to gather signatures on, and there's a barcode there, and they were giving this to all the leadership to tell them, get this out there. You've got to get more signatures. We've got to get more, and we've got to get, now we know, 15,000 emails. And it wasn't clear. Nobody mentioned that they mentioned the 15,000 emails at this meeting, but you could see it's a whole mobilization. I mean, all those letters went out this afternoon. This meeting happened at night. It's this push.
That's right.
That's right. So here I think was the most interesting thing that we learned from the meeting. And as Landon said, we were told that there was sort of a question answer. So the leaders, and these are the top leaders, Mormon leaders in the area. You have to understand, these are the top, right? And they were able to ask some questions about what they didn't understand or needed clarification on prior to going into the meeting Tuesday night, or even just to take back to people in their wards and stakes that were asking questions. And so you, I think, really paid attention when they were telling you about some of these questions that led us to this slide. Why is RLUIPA and the Boston Temple so important?
Yeah, and this was really surprising because what I was told was that one of the leaders stood up and said, "We've been asked to talk to our neighbors about this and tell them why the temple's important." And he said, and he told them that I've done that. But the problem is, they then ask me, they tell me I'm not opposed to the temple. We don't understand why it needs to be so large and why it needs to be so tall. And he said, I don't have an answer for that. All I can tell them is I only care about what goes on inside the temple. The height does not matter to me. That's not important to me. Please tell me why the height of the steeple is important to us. And the lawyer got up and started explaining about RLUIPA. And he said that RLUIPA started with the Boston Temple and that it came out of that, and that Senator Hatch introduced this bill, and that's obvious that it's at the request of the Mormon Church. This RLUIPA law was introduced to Congress through an LDS senator on the behalf of the LDS Church. He then got Senator Kennedy on board, and they said, this is for all the churches, not just our church. But this is the church that's using it as a sword and that's just beating community after community. They designed this law so they could try to override all the local zoning codes and do whatever they wanted. And they just overrode everybody and didn't pitch this as what they're trying to do. But the lawyer went through and said,
well, let's tell everybody what RLUIPA stands for, in case this is the first time anybody's hearing it. It's Religious Land Use and Incarcerated Persons Act. And it basically makes it impossible for a town to discriminate. Like if somebody comes in, wants to build a synagogue, and the town council's like, oh, we don't want this here. You can't just say no. RLUIPA means that, you can build it and you can have elements to the building if they are essential to your worship. And this is where the church is trying to introduce this idea of the height of the steeple always being a completely integral part of their religion, to use this RLUIPA law, which, as Landon pointed out, supposed to be a shield to protect religions, to be able to let them build if there was, some kind of animosity or prejudice in a town. But in this case, the Mormons use it as a sword by saying, if you don't, look at RLUIPA, let the consequences follow, right? And it's all because there was a fight with the Boston Temple over the steeple. They actually dedicated it. The residents didn't quite understand what was going on, as is par for the course. So as they start seeing this in 2000 being built, they're like, what is that? And so they started fighting right away. The temple was dedicated and operational for a year or so without a steeple as they worked it out in court. And they finally, as Landon said, LDS senators, we have RLUIPA, you're able to use that as a sword. And that's happening in every single city that we are covering. So it was interesting that the lawyer tonight, we heard, brought that up, right?
He specifically said that's how it got passed. And he said the brethren are unwilling to change the size or the height of these buildings because you have to look at what's happening nationally and the church as a whole, and that if we give up and we say that we're going to build it smaller, that sets a precedence in other communities that they'll make us build it smaller, and that all of our temples will then be limited to 30 feet because that's all that you can build in a residential neighborhood, which is exactly why you have zoning codes, so that you can't build things bigger than what's supposed to be built in that area. But they're saying that the brethren have told them that they will not back down on this, and that they will build these temples, and that they will not give in on the heights, and that they are going to continue to push the steeple height, the wall height, the mass of the building, the lighting of the building, the height of the ceilings. Every single architectural component of the building is essential to their worship, and that they cannot worship without it. which is absolutely false. It's an absolute lie. It is a legal runaround to try to get around the zoning laws. And he basically said that in the leadership meeting. He told them that we're not backing down because we are afraid that they'll then make us build smaller temples than these massive giant things. And he even said, from what I was told, that they're having this problem in all the communities, that Cody and all the other communities are fighting back against these, and that if they give in on one, they'll have to give in on all of them. So they're not going to give in. And that to me was really hard when I hear that this is what they're telling them, because it's simply not true, and they know it's not true.
That is a bombshell, and it's a devastating bombshell. I think it is for all of those communities. They basically, if what we're hearing is correct at this meeting, it's digging in. They're not going to budge because they're afraid if they do, it's going to affect all the temple building. And again, there are 11 temples that are lower in height, a dome or a flat ceiling. In Hong Kong, they took the spire off in the remodel a few years ago. So I'm just not understanding. But right now, they're absolutely insisting, like you said, the massive size, massive, and the height, all of it, it's all part of what it means to go to the temple as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And I'm looking at my notes, and he even said, is it a doctrine? No, you will not find it in our doctrine. You will not find it in the scriptures, but the brethren are insisting that we build these high and tall.
I'm stunned by hearing that. And it's very disheartening.
It is very disheartening.
And confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing because I think we've heard other information than that.
We have heard other information than that. This is Elder Bednar. Now, anyone in the church knows who Elder Bednar is. He is one of the 12 apostles. He is number 6 in line. The way the LDS church works is whoever's the longest serving member of the Quorum of the 12 becomes the president. Mm-hmm. 3 of them are currently in the first presidency and are over 90 years old. Mm-hmm. Bednar is much younger. He's in his 60s, I believe. Mm-hmm. Based on all the tables, he will be the prophet, and he will be it for a long time because he's so much younger than everybody else, the 5 in front of him. They'll all die within 10 years or so, and he'll move into this position. So he's the number 6 guy. He outranks.
He's very forward facing. He's out there a lot. He's the face
of the church now,
more than almost anyone else. Yeah, because he is very young. He has vitality. He's the one that kind of does a lot of media. He talked to the National Press Corps. Remember that? That was kind of crazy, isn't that? Yeah. So yeah, he's very forward facing, and he says a lot about the church. He's the one that tells people how the church operates. He's the forward facing man, I would say.
He outranks every single person in that meeting. Every one of those local authorities, every one of the Burt McConkeys, they report to him.
All the state presidents, all the area reps.
And when they say the brethren, they're talking about the 12 apostles and the first presidency. So he is one of the brethren that they are talking about, who is now saying height and mass means everything to them. And here is what he has to say.
This was last year.
I hear people, oh, that's a small temple. There's no such thing as a small temple. They're just temples. There's no such thing as small covenants or small ordinances. And see, that to me reflects this fixation on it's the building. Who cares what the size is if you have access to the same covenants and ordinances whereby we have a covenant connection with the Father and the Son?
And that's how I was raised.
That's
Who cares?
Every member of the church was raised, that the covenants can be done anywhere. The size of the building doesn't matter. And what's he talking about? He's talking about the Guam temple.
The Guam temple.
The Guam temple is 6,861 square feet and 74 feet high.
Yeah, we should have gotten a picture of that. Yep.
It's got
Pull one
it's
up
got
on
a
your
dome.
phone.
It's got a dome on it, but it's 74 feet
I'm gonna
tall.
find it.
And it's 1 story tall. It is
Yep.
not the mass. It is not the height. It is not anything. It 74 feet is about the same height as the Stake Center steeple is currently there. They could build a temple just like that would meet all the residential codes. That's the key. If you're building in residential zones, your temple should be residential size and fit in with the residents. And that's what the Guam temple is. And the apostle right here said, doesn't matter what the size is, doesn't matter what the building looks like. None of this is important. What's important is what happened inside. He says it right here. And yet they're sitting there telling all of their members that that's not true, that you must go tell them all these other things are important because we need the legal argument to push this down their throats. That's what they're doing.
Yep. And it's confusing. This was a whole longer video than this called No Small Temples. And it came out last year in 2023. And he just talked about the beautiful things that happen inside the temple. And it does not matter what kind of building it is. So interesting to hear these conflicting messages. I can see why so many active LDS residents reach out to us and say, we're confused. We're not comfortable. We don't know what's happening. So
there were a couple other things mentioned in the meeting. Some of the questions, well, they told the people specifically, you're going to go out on, and the press is going to be there, and you don't get to speak for the church. They're going to try to find you. They don't want to find the PR spokesman. They want members of the church, and they're going to try to get you to say things. And you need to make sure you tell them that you don't speak for the church. And they're going to ask you, do you think the church is going to sue? And you say, I don't know. I don't know what the church is going to do, because you don't. Even though they just sat in a meeting where they told them that it was going to be a long game if the church didn't if the city didn't vote the way they told them to. And then they also discussed the letter from the mayor, and what a wonderful mayor that mayor of McKinney was.
Let's remind everybody what that is. That was our last podcast that we did. It was the mayor of McKinney. Again, the temple's name McKinney, but built in Fairview, written to everyone on the town council in Fairview. And I called it the gushing letter. It was just, oh my goodness, there couldn't be enough praise for the LDS church. And we covered that in our last podcast, if you want to look that up. But boy, it was a letter. We'd never seen a letter quite like that. It really was a love letter, telling the Fairview Town Council, you've got to build this temple. The Mormons are wonderful. You've got to build it.
And my understanding is they were gushing over the mayor at the meeting as well.
Oh, okay.
And
so
what a wonderful man he was, and not so much the Fairview mayor. I couldn't quite tell what they said. They said, but
well, since we're just hearing it from people that were there, we don't know exactly what was said.
He said. Yeah.
Interesting updates. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. And then we were told that typically when there's a church meeting, even if it's something like this with a political bent inside the church, I'm sure it probably started with a prayer, but it ended with a closing song. Now, this is a children's song that they sing in the LDS church. The children's organization in the church is called Primary, and it's for kids that are 11 and under. I was a primary pianist for a long time, meaning I played the piano, and this was one of my favorite songs that all the kids would request. And it's called I Love to See the Temple. I'm going there someday. And it talks about, the beauty and mostly about what happens inside the temple and happens to you and how you feel. So the grown adults sang this children's song for the closing prayer as inspiration about the temple. So that was interesting. And it reminded me, jogged my memory, that I actually wrote new lyrics to this. Like I said, I used to be a primary pianist. And so just for fun, I kind of penned some new lyrics, a parody song. And we have a friend who goes by Cultural Hall. He has his own YouTube channel. He's the king of the parody songs, wouldn't you say, Landon? He's just amazing. He's incredible. So I sent him the lyrics, just texted him, hey, Culch. We call him Culch for short. Hey, Culch, can you do something with this? Within 15 minutes, he like sends okay, maybe it was half an hour. He sends the song back to me and then he puts visuals to it. So again, those of you that are not LDS probably won't recognize this song, but just know that it's a beloved children's song about the temple that is sung in the LDS church. So let's play Cult's video. I got his permission. Again, he's amazing. Please look up everything he does. He's incredible.
I'd love to see the temple spire. It's reaching to the sky. It's made the way God wants it, insanely tall and high. For the spire is the only thing that matters to the Savior. So we'll build it tall and we'll be proud. In this we'll never waver. I love to see the temple, the lobbies where I'll stay. The members all walk past me, 'cause I don't pay to play. For the temple is a private club, and you can't pass the foyer. So if a temple comes to your town, make sure you have a lawyer.
Oh, that was fun. That was kind of satisfying to write. And Culch put it to some really good graphics there. So that was great. Yep. So it was funny because, I'd been communicating with different people through the evening and receiving emails just like I did live about, 5 minutes ago. And then I was like, okay, so how are we going to end this update, this McKinney update? What are we going to say? And then suddenly a person, I paraphrased here, but a person kind of wrote to me just some thoughts about meetings like that and just what's happening. And I thought this was a really good way to just kind of end it. Do you want to read this, Landon?
When the church needs to rally their troops around to get a temple built, who did they send to Texas? 3 lawyers and an Area 70 who has 34 years experience in journalism. They didn't send the prophet or an apostle or even a missionary to bear their humble testimony of the power of God being felt in the temple. They sent 3 lawyers and a journalist to coach us on what parts of the temple to bear our testimony about, how to evade reporters' questions, and which petitions to sign.
Wow. I thought that was so powerful. And I texted back, I said, you know what? I'm going to use those sentiments at the end because that's exactly it.
And it's interesting because they had a fast today specifically for the temple. So it appears that they don't have a lot of faith in God solving this. So they've sent the lawyers and the PR people to solve it for God. Very interesting. And I just say in closing here that, Texas is known for Remember the Alamo. And when if Fairview is willing to stand up against this onslaught from the church, other communities around the country are going to say, "Remember the Fairview Temple," as their battle cry. Now, someone might point out, well, the Alamo, they all lost and got slaughtered. And that's what the church completely intends to do with you. This is how they operate. And so, all of our wishes goes out to the Fairview city, because it's not an easy decision when you're threatened by that kind of overpowering money, political connections. They've got a strong fight on their hands, but hopefully they can do the right thing and they can withstand this.
Yeah, I think so too. We should point out that, Landon, you were born in Texas, weren't you?
I was born in
That's right.
Texas. Yeah,
That's right. So you have credibility, right? You are a local.
I'm a Texan.
Everyone's always saying you're not a local. They're like, yeah. And you know what you said is absolutely right. And I will tell this: when the McKinney planning board voted to not recommend, at least in this condition, the temple. Again, we're saying, please build it somewhere where it's appropriate. When that happened, and I sent some of the footage to one of the residents in one of the towns that's been fighting for a while. And I hate to use the word fight. That's not what I mean. I mean, they've been in this back and forth with the church. And that resident was very emotional and said, I needed that today. I needed that. I needed to hear that a town, had actually done something. As a planning commission had actually listened to the residents, had not been intimidated. So you're absolutely right. Standing on the shoulders of some of these other residents in other towns like Heber and Cody that have been involved in this for over a year. It's exhausting. A town like Fairview, it can set an example, and it can just say, let's work together as a community and a church, and let's find a place where the temple works, where it will be that blessing that they keep describing to the community. It can be that blessing. It can be positive PR. It can be good feelings, good relations. It can be a blessing, but that means being open to input and to working and to bending.
Yeah, to those codes that are put there. And again, if that's where they want the temple, they may have to redesign it to meet the codes.
Yep.
And RLUIPA that they talked about specifically says that you don't get an automatic pass on meeting zoning codes. You have to show it significantly impacts your ability to worship. And we just heard an apostle that every one of those people in that meeting sustain as an apostle of God say, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yep. That's it. That's like a mic drop moment. Do we have a mic we can drop? We can't really, I think, yeah, no, it's not going to work. All right. The final slide, just to update you, this meeting that we've been talking about, we've mentioned it a few times. This is the Fairview Town Council. It is Tuesday night, June 4th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. This meeting is streamed, as all these meetings are. They're open to watch publicly. So if you are interested in this, I'm not kidding you. Landon and I have watched so many hours of town council meetings, and I never thought I would be fascinated by this kind of stuff, but it's amazing to see how a town works, especially in this scenario, especially understanding the background that we've just given you. So you can go, we'll try to, in the show notes, include the link to where you can access the movie, like we're sitting there with popcorn, meeting, and oh my gosh, it's getting late. Otherwise, just go to Fairview Town, and I'm sure if you look up, the community schedule, that you'll be able to find it there. Don't you think, Landon?
Yep, it's absolutely there.
Yep, it should be there, and we'll try to put it in the show notes. So, well, thank you for sticking with us for this midnight podcast. Again, it seems like we're nocturnal anymore. Please comment. Let us know what you think. Have you been following some of these temples? Have you also been following Nemo's wonderful, information that he's putting out? I'm so happy to see that other people in the podcasting world are starting to kind of perk up and notice this, because it is really important. It's important to support the residents in these towns, and it's equally important to support our friends and family that are faithful Latter-day Saints that are being asked by an institution to do something that just doesn't feel right, I sense. I think that's equally as important. Those are the people that we are trying to support and shine a spotlight on what's happening. So please comment and let us know what you think. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. If you would like to help support Mormonish Podcast and all of our temple busting activities, right? Is that what we are, temple busters? If you would like to help support us financially, we did recently just become a 501(c)(3), which was really amazing for us. We were really excited, and we do have easier ways to donate. And of course, it's all tax deductible now. So we do have a link to donor box in our show notes, and we really, really, with heartfelt thanks, appreciate those of you that do, especially make those monthly donations. Those are so important to us because we know we can count on that, and we appreciate you so much. So thank you. There's also a link in the show notes to our Mormonish merch where you can grab a mug. One of our friends today purchased a cute hat. Oh my gosh. She sent me a picture. I didn't even tell you this, Landon. It was Martine. She sent us a picture. Cute Mormonish hat. She says she's taking it with her to Greece. So there you go. If you want a hat you can wear to Greece internationally, get a Mormonish hat, right? That's a great endorsement. Anyway, we will say good night for now. Please, everybody, tune in to the Fairview Town Council. I guarantee it's going to be absolutely, shall I say, revelatory? Is that a word that we use here on Mormonish? I don't know. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.